Have you ever wondered why waking up seems so difficult lately? Not just physically, but emotionally too? Like each day is an extra weight on your shoulders, a silent battle that no one around you can see? Maybe you've started questioning if there's something wrong with you, if this constant feeling of displacement, this sadness without a name, this urge to hide from the world are signs that you're sick. But what if I told you that maybe you're not depressed? What if this pain you feel, this constant restlessness, this feeling of not belonging anywhere, weren't symptoms of an illness, but rather signs that you're awakening? Awakening to realities that most people prefer to ignore, to truths that hurt, to a world that has lost its way and insists on calling this normalcy. Have you noticed how you seem to be the only one who sees certain things? Like you're the only one bothered by the superficiality of conversations, by everyone's rush, by this crazy race after goals that don't even make sense? That feeling of being at a party where everyone's laughing, but you don't get the joke, and worse, you can't pretend that you do. If you recognized yourself in these words, if you felt a tightness in your chest or a sigh of relief that someone finally put into words what you feel, then this video is for you. For you who carry a sensitivity that sometimes feels like a curse, who think too much, feel too much, question too much. For you who can't conform to ready-made answers and live in a constant search for something more truthful, deeper, more real. There are times when you feel like you're the only one who sees things as they really are, right? That strange feeling of being at a party where everyone's laughing, but you don't understand the joke. Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist, talked about this when describing people who are born with a greater sensitivity to capture the world's shadows. He said that some of us are like more sensitive antennas, picking up frequencies that others can't or don't want to hear. You're not crazy when you notice the falseness in forced smiles, when you feel the emptiness behind superficial conversations, when you see the hidden sadness in the eyes of people who insist on saying they're fine. This ability of yours to see beyond the mask that everyone wears isn't a defect. It's a gift that hurts. It's like having sharper vision in a world that prefers to live in twilight. Maybe you grew up feeling different, as if you weren't part of the same species as others. While your classmates had fun with things that seemed empty to you, you stayed observing, trying to understand why none of it made sense. And the more you saw, the heavier it became to carry this knowledge alone. Jung said that consciousness is a burden, and you feel this in your skin every day, seeing too much, understanding too much, feeling too much. It's as if your soul was born without the protective layer that allows other people to live on the surface without drowning in the depths of existence. This sharp perception of reality can make you feel isolated, but it also makes you more human, more compassionate, more real in a world that sometimes seems made of plastic and appearances. There's a loneliness that has nothing to do with being physically alone. It's the loneliness of those who think, who question, who can't accept ready-made answers as if they were absolute truths. You can be in a room full of people and still feel completely isolated, as if you spoke a language that no one else understands. This loneliness is born when you realize that your mind works differently. While others are content with shallow explanations, you need to dig deeper. While they accept what's on the surface, you dive into the depths. And down there, where the difficult questions and uncomfortable truths live, it's cold and silent. But it's also where the most precious treasures are. Your authenticity, your individuality, your true soul. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard knew this loneliness well. He wrote about the anguish of being a unique individual in a society that wants everyone to be the same. He said that the courage to be different is both the greatest achievement and the greatest suffering of a person. You feel this when you try to explain your thoughts and realize that people look at you as if you're from another planet. It's painful to realize that your deepest conversations happen with yourself, that your most important questions echo in the void. You'd like to find someone who understood your concerns without you having to explain every comma. Someone who is also bothered by the same things that bother you. But even in this loneliness, there's a strange beauty. It's what forces you to develop a more intimate relationship with yourself, to discover who you really are when no one is watching. It's in this isolation that you learn to listen to your own voice, to trust your intuition, to value your own company. The loneliness of those who think differently isn't empty. It's full of possibilities, discoveries, a freedom that few dare to experience. Your heart is like a sponge that absorbs everything. The sadness of the neighbor who lost his job, the collective anxiety that hangs in the air, the silent pain of that person who crossed paths with you on the street. You carry weights that aren't even yours, feel pains you can't even explain, cry for sufferings you haven't directly experienced, and everyone tells you that you're too sensitive, as if that were a character flaw. Psychologist Elaine Aron researched for decades what she calls highly sensitive people, HSP. She discovered that about 20% of the population is born with a more reactive nervous system, more permeable to emotions and energies from the environment. It's a genetic characteristic, a real neurological difference. It's like being a person with super sharp hearing in an increasingly noisy world. You feel the texture of people's emotions, notice when someone is lying about being okay, pick up the heavy energy of environments before even understanding what's happening. Violent movies affect you for days. Sad news sticks to your soul like glue. Arguments leave you exhausted even when you didn't participate in them. This gift of feeling intensely makes you more empathetic, more compassionate, more human. But it also exhausts you in a way that those who don't have this sensitivity can't understand. It's as if you were an emotional lightning rod for the world, attracting and absorbing all the emotional electricity that's in the air. The tiredness you feel isn't laziness. It's exhaustion of a soul that works full-time processing not only your own emotions, but also those of others. You need more silence, more solitude, more time to recover from this constant sensory overload. Recognizing this doesn't mean closing yourself off to the world, but rather learning to create filters, to choose when to open and when to protect your heart, to understand that taking care of your sensitivity is an act of self-love, not selfishness. You look around and feel as if you were watching a theater play where everyone memorized their roles but forgot the original script. Everyone representing versions of themselves, pretending to be okay when they're not, pretending that life makes sense when actually nobody really knows what they're doing here. On social media, you see perfect lives that you know don't exist. People smiling in photos while crying inside, flaunting happiness they don't feel, selling an edited version of reality that not even they believe. And the strangest thing is that everyone seems to have entered this silent agreement to pretend this is normal. Albert Camus, the French Algerian philosopher, perfectly described this feeling when he talked about the absurd. For him, the absurd is born when we confront our human need to understand with the irrational silence of the world. It's this feeling you have when you realize that most people live on autopilot, following scripts they didn't even write. You can't enter this collective performance. Your soul screams for authenticity in an era where being true has become almost a rebellion. When someone asks, "How are you?" you'd like to answer honestly, but you've learned that nobody really wants to hear. People expect an automatic, "I'm fine," even when it's obvious that nothing is fine. This refusal to participate in the theater of appearances makes you seem strange, antisocial, negative. But actually, you're being brave in a way that few are. You're refusing to lie to yourself and others. You're choosing the uncomfortable truth instead of the comfortable illusion. The problem isn't that you can't perform. It's that your soul values truth too much to accept living in lies, even if those lies are socially accepted and even encouraged. You feel a hunger that isn't for food. It's hunger for true connection, for conversation that touches the soul, for looks that understand without needing words. But everything around you seems artificial, manufactured, made to impress instead of truly connect. It's as if you were a collector of authentic moments in a world that only produces imitations. Conversations always revolve around the same empty subjects: the weather, work, gossip about people you don't even know well. You'd like to talk about dreams that had special meaning, about fears that wake you up at dawn, about that strange feeling of being alive in an infinite universe. But these conversations seem forbidden, as if there were a tacit agreement that you're only allowed to talk about superficial things. Polish sociologist Zygmunt Bauman wrote about liquid modernity, this era when everything is fluid, temporary, disposable. Relationships became internet connections that can be turned off at any moment. Love became swiping left or right. Friendship became number of followers. Everything became metrics, statistics, performance. You feel nostalgic for a depth that maybe never really existed, or that existed but was buried by the rush of the modern world. You want to sit with someone and talk about what really matters, about what truly hurts, about what brings genuine joy. You want to be seen and accepted with all your contradictions, fears, and imperfect beauties. This search for the real makes you question everything. Do people really love each other, or have they just gotten used to one another? Did they choose their professions out of passion or social pressure? Are they happy or just pretending to be so they don't bother others? Your refusal to accept plastic as if it were gold doesn't make you too demanding. It makes you someone who still believes that life can be deeper, more truthful, more alive than this edited version that everyone is selling. Your tendency toward introspection isn't a defect. It's your particular way of processing the complexity of existence. While others seek answers in the constant noise of the external world, you find wisdom in the silence of your internal world. It's as if you had a private library in your soul, full of books that only you can read. Carl Jung said a phrase that might have changed your life when you first heard it. He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens. Your natural movement is inward, toward the depths of your own psyche, toward that silent place where your most intimate truths live. And this makes you seem weird to a society that's afraid of its own silence. We live in an era of constant flight from introspection. People fill every second of the day with external stimuli: music, notifications, conversations, series, anything to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But you need this silence, like other people need air. It's in it that you process your experiences, find your answers, connect with who you really are. Your internal world is rich, complex, full of nuances that you can't always explain to others. You have deep conversations with yourself, make discoveries about your own nature, question your motivations with an honesty that sometimes hurts. This capacity for self-reflection makes you more conscious, more authentic, more whole. The problem is that in an extroverted culture, your need for solitude is seen as antisocial. People don't understand that you're not running away from them. You're going to meet yourself. You're not isolating yourself out of laziness or depression. You're withdrawing to nourish yourself, to know yourself, to strengthen yourself. This inner silence that you cultivate isn't empty. It's full of discoveries, insights, understandings that are only born when the mind stops running and allows itself to dive into the deep waters of the soul. You can't get excited about the goals that everyone thinks are fundamental. While others get thrilled about promotions at work, you wonder if it's worth trading more years of your life for a bigger salary doing something that makes no real difference in the world. While they dream of bigger cars, more luxurious houses, you dream of a life that has real meaning. Friedrich Nietzsche warned about this when he talked about the death of God, not just the religious God, but all the traditional values that gave meaning to people's lives. According to him, there would come a time when we'd have to create our own values, find our own purpose in a world that stopped offering ready-made answers. That time has come, and you're living it in your skin. Your heart rebels against this crazy race after goals that don't feed the soul. You see people killing themselves working for things that don't make them genuinely happy, just to maintain an appearance of success that not even they know why it's important. And when you question this, they call you lazy, a dreamer, out of touch with reality. But what reality is this where we spend most of our lives doing things that don't fulfill us, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't even really like? Your soul is asking for something deeper, more truthful, more aligned with who you really are. It's asking for real purpose, not just constant movement disguised as productivity. This refusal of yours to jump on the hamster wheel isn't lack of ambition, it's excess of consciousness. You want your life to truly matter, to make a difference, to leave the world a little better or at least more truthful. And this requires courage, because it means swimming against the current in a society that values quantity more than quality, speed more than depth. Your revolt against emptiness is, actually, a search for fullness. And that's the sanest thing anyone can do in a world that has lost its way. You turn on the news and feel in your chest each tragedy, each injustice, each cry for help that echoes from the four corners of the planet. While others can watch the news as if it were entertainment, turn off the TV and go on with their lives normally, you carry that pain for days, weeks, sometimes forever. Psychologist Elaine Aron's research showed that highly sensitive people have greater activity in brain areas related to empathy and emotional processing. This means that when you see suffering, whether in real life, on TV, or even in movies, your brain reacts as if you were living that pain. It's not your dramatization, it's neurology. You feel social injustice like a stab in the stomach. Environmental destruction gives you real physical anguish. Human cruelty keeps you from sleeping. And the worst part is that you can't simply turn off this sensitivity like others do. For you, ignoring the world's suffering would be like pretending it's not raining when you're soaked. This ability to feel collective pain connects you to something greater than yourself. It makes you more compassionate, more human, more aware of the interconnection between all beings. But it's also exhausting to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders when you already have your own burdens to carry. German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said that compassion is the basis of all true morality. For him, people who can feel others' pain are the only ones capable of acting with genuine ethics. Your sensitivity to others' pain isn't weakness. It's a superior form of moral consciousness. The challenge is learning to channel this compassion in a way that empowers you instead of paralyzing you. Feeling the world's pain can motivate you to do something to alleviate it, even if it's on a small scale. Even if it's just being kinder to the people around you. There are days when you wake up with a strange feeling, a nausea that doesn't come from your stomach, but from your soul. It's as if suddenly you saw life from the outside, realized the absurdity of all this rushing around, felt the crushing weight of being alive without having asked to be born. Jean-Paul Sartre called this existential nausea, that vertigo that comes when you realize you're radically free and at the same time completely responsible for your choices. This feeling can come out of nowhere. You're doing something routine, brushing your teeth, waiting for the bus, working. And suddenly you ask yourself, what am I doing here? Not in the practical sense, but in the deepest sense. What are you doing on this planet, in this life, at this specific moment in human history? And why does all of this seem both very important and completely meaningless at the same time? Sartre said we are condemned to freedom. A phrase that sounds contradictory, but that you understand perfectly. You have to choose all the time. What job to have, who to relate to, what values to follow, what kind of person to be. And there's no instruction manual. There's no higher authority saying what the right choice is. This total freedom is terrifying. The existential anguish you feel isn't mental illness. It's too much lucidity. It's the clear perception that life doesn't come with a predefined purpose. That you have to create your own meaning in a universe that is fundamentally indifferent to your existence. It's scary, but also liberating. If nothing has a given meaning, then you can give it whatever meaning you want. This existential nausea can paralyze you or empower you, depending on how you choose to deal with it. You can despair over the absence of ready-made answers, or you can rejoice in the possibility of writing your own story. The vertigo of freedom can scare you or inspire you to live more authentically and consciously. Carl Jung developed a concept that can explain much of what you feel when you look at the world, the collective shadow. Just as each person has aspects of themselves they prefer to deny or hide, societies also have their shadow, everything we collectively reject, but that continues to exist backstage in civilization. You can see this collective shadow with a clarity that sometimes scares you. You see violence masked as order, greed disguised as progress, cruelty sold as necessity. While most prefer to believe we live in a civilized and evolved society, you see the barbarism that pulses beneath the polished surface. You notice how we normalize absurd things, people dying of hunger while others throw food away, individuals working themselves to exhaustion to enrich others who never really worked, nature being systematically destroyed to feed a system that nobody can properly explain why it exists. And when you point out these contradictions, they tell you that's just how it is. That it's normal, that it's always been this way. Jung said that as long as we don't recognize our collective shadow, it will continue to manifest in destructive ways. Wars, prejudices, social injustices. All of this are expressions of the shadow that a society refuses to see in itself. You see this and feel like an involuntary accomplice to a system you consider morally bankrupt. This perception of the collective shadow can generate a devastating sense of powerlessness. How to change something so big, so ingrained, so accepted by the majority. But it can also motivate you to at least not consciously contribute to this shadow, to live more with integrity, to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Recognizing the shadow is the first step to transforming it, and you have this courage to look at what others prefer to ignore. Maybe what you call depression is actually a painful awakening, like when someone suddenly turns on the light in a dark room. At first, the brightness hurts your eyes, everything gets blurred, You want to close your eyelids and go back to the comfortable darkness. But after your eyes get used to it, you can see things that were previously invisible. You're waking up at a time when most people prefer to sleep. And whoever wakes up first always feels alone, disoriented, questioning whether it wouldn't be better to go back to the collective sleep. It's easier to live on autopilot, go with the flow, not question anything. But your soul doesn't accept this ease. It demands that you remain conscious, even when consciousness hurts. Greek philosopher Plato told the famous allegory of the cave, chained prisoners who see only shadows on the wall and believe that's all of reality. When one of them breaks free and sees the real world, first he gets confused and scared. If he goes back to tell the others, they don't believe him. They prefer their familiar shadows to the uncomfortable truth. You're like that prisoner who broke free. You saw beyond the shadows that most accept as total reality. And this puts you in a difficult position. You can no longer pretend you don't see what you see, but you also can't convince others to look beyond their own chains. This awakening isn't comfortable. It would be much simpler to accept ready-made explanations, follow traditions without questioning, work, consume, die without asking many questions. But your expanded consciousness no longer allows this simplicity. You've been called to something greater, to live with more authenticity, to question with more courage, to feel with more depth. It's not easy being a pioneer of your own consciousness, but maybe that's exactly what the world needs. People who refuse to sleep, who keep their eyes open even when reality hurts, who choose uncomfortable truth instead of tranquilizing lies. If you recognize your own journey in these words, your soul needs care, not cure. You're not broken. You're too whole for a fragmented world. You're not sick. You're too sane to accept collective madness as normalcy. What you need isn't to adapt to the world, but to create your own space of sanity within it. Start small, with simple things that feed your sensitivity instead of trying to suffocate it. Take a blank sheet of paper and write without rush, without objective, just letting thoughts flow through the pen. It doesn't need to make sense to anyone but you. Walk in nature paying attention to small details. The texture of tree bark, the different sound each bird makes, the way light changes color during the day. Look for a person who also thinks deeply. It could be a friend, a therapist, someone you met in a book through their words. Have at least one real conversation per week, one of those that touches on subjects that truly matter. Read poetry. Listen to music that makes your soul vibrate. Watch movies that make you think instead of just distracting you. Create healthy boundaries with the outside world. It's not mandatory to watch all the newscasts. Participate in all empty conversations. Be available to everyone all the time. Your emotional energy is finite and precious. Protect it like you'd protect any valuable treasure. Name your feelings without judging them. When you feel that inexplicable melancholy, say to yourself, "I'm feeling melancholy." When existential anguish comes, acknowledge, "I'm questioning the meaning of things again." Naming doesn't solve it, but it takes away the haunting power of emotions. You don't need to fit into the world. You need to create your own little corner of authenticity within it. Your sensitivity isn't a defect, it's a gift. Use it to make the world a little more human, more truthful, more compassionate. You may not be able to change everything, but you can choose not to contribute to superficiality, to cruelty, to collective lies. And that's already revolutionary. If this content makes sense to you, I invite you to get to know my exclusive ebook, Alchemy and Archetypes, where there are practical exercises that can help you deal with all of this. Thank you for making it this far.